All right, ready to go. Senator Daniels, would you mind screen sharing your flag, and we'll join in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Good morning, everyone. I'm Senator Bob Guida from District 2. Today we'll be holding a meeting of the Senate Ways and Means Committee. Before we start, I'm going to read through a checklist to ensure that the meeting we're holding is in full compliance with the right to know law. As chair of the Senate Ways and Means Committee, I find that due to the state of emergency declared by the governor, as well as the COVID-19 as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic, and in accordance with his emergency order number 12, pursuant to Executive Order 2020-04 and its extensions, this public body is authorized to meet electronically. Please note that there is no physical location to observe and listen contemporaneously to this meeting, which was authorized pursuant to the governor's emergency order. In accordance with the emergency order, I am confirming that we are providing public access to the meeting by telephone, with additional access possible by video and other electronic means. We're utilizing Zoom for this electronic meeting. All members of the committee and selected legislative staff have the ability to communicate contemporaneously in this meeting through this platform, and the public has access to contemporaneously watch and or listen to the meeting on Zoom or YouTube and via phone by following the directions and links provided on the General Court website. We've provided public notice of the necessary information for accessing the meeting in the Senate calendar. We're providing a mechanism for the public to alert the public body during the meeting if there are problems with access. If anyone does have a problem, please email remotesenate@leg.state.nh.us. It's remotesenate@leg.state.nh.us, or call 603-271-6931. It's 271-6931. In the event the public is unable to access the meeting, it will be adjourned and rescheduled. Please note that all votes taken during this meeting shall be done by roll call. And finally, let's start by taking a roll call attendance of our senators. When each member states their presence, please also state where you are, and if anyone else is in the room with you during this meeting. This is required under the right to know law. I'll call the roll. Senator D'Alessandro.
I'm Senator Lou D'Alessandro. I'm in Manchester. I'm in my home, and I'm all alone.
Senator Daniels.
Senator Gary Daniels. I'm at my home in Milford, and I am alone.
Senator Hennessy.
Good morning, Erin Hennessy from Littleton. I am home alone.
Senator Rosenwald.
Good morning, Cindy Rosenwald from Nashua. I'm in Twin Mountain, and the broadband is not so strong here, so I've got my video off.
Welcome to my district.
I'm
Yes.
Senator Bob Guida, and representing
Cold here.
District 2 in my home in Warren with my dog, my grandson, and my daughter, all of whom are upstairs at the present time, but may transit.
I forgot to say I was alone.
You write a book, Alone in Twin Mountain.
Right, exactly. It's cold here.
It's
All
very
right,
cold. And the wind blows in Twin Mountain.
Right. What we're going to do today is we're going to start by executing a number of bills. And then we'll go into a couple of bills, I think 112 and 102, and hold hearings on those. And give me just a second to pull up the appropriate file here. All right, so I'd like to go entertain a motion to go into executive session.
So moved.
Say moved by D'Alessandro. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Senator Rosenwald. All in favor? We'll call the roll. Senator Hennessy,
Yes.
Senator Daniels,
Yes.
Senator D'Alessandro,
Yes.
Senator Rosenwald,
Yes.
Senator Guida votes yes. We're now in executive session, and I'd entertain a motion to exec Senate Bill 3.
Move Senate Bill 3 ought to pass.
I'll
Okay,
second
it's ought
that.
to pass, but ought to pass by Daniel, second by Hennessy. Any discussion?
Just if I might, Mr. Chairman,
Please.
I think I think we're going to support the bill. I think we have to do that, but we must recognize the fact that there are two schools of thought on this bill. One was given to us in testimony by Bill Odger. The other was given to us by the Commissioner of Revenue, Lindsay Stepp. There's a real variation there in terms of what this bill is going to cost. I think that when I spoke, I said, my whole point is that we treat this with fairness to everybody, and as best as possible, we follow the federal regulations. And I hope that once we move this bill across, there'll be more work done on it so that it arrives at that particle, exactly where it's fairness, and we treat everybody we treat everybody given the federal regulations. Now, I know that a number of states have come out with a policy of non-tax. And I think the most recent one probably isn't it Arkansas that has done that. So I want my colleagues to understand that this thing really needs more thought. It's got to be passed. I understand that, but it needs work, and I hope that work will continue on the other side, as it's essential. It's essential to us in terms of our revenues as we move forward for the next operating budget. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Further comment?
Yep.
Senator Rosenwald.
Thank you. Try to leave my video on for this. I'm going to support this too, because I think it's not helpful to provide relief and then tax it. But if this bill does go over to the House and isn't tabled, and I don't know what your plan is for it, I think we should be cautious and account for the $65 million in the budget and not magically hope that there is no cost to it. And so I'm going to definitely vote for it, but I hope we'll recognize the most, be the most cautious in our planning. Thank you.
Further comment? All right, I'm going to take the opportunity to share some thoughts. This bill is conflicted in some respects, in that it treats businesses differently. It, however, is my judgment that even though we risk helping businesses that don't need it, we're definitely going to be helping a lot of businesses that do. So there will be some windfalls to some of those who have taken the PPP loans and received forgiveness. There will also be benefit to a lot of our companies. And so because of the severe impact of the pandemic on our small businesses, which are the backbone of our state, I'm going to support this bill and look to perhaps work with Chairman Major and the House to see if we can maybe remedy some of the concerns that I have and that have been expressed. With that, we'll go ahead and take a vote. Senator D'Alessandro.
Yes.
Senator Hennessy.
Yes.
Senator Daniels.
Yes.
Senator Rosenwald.
Yes.
And Senator Gaida votes yes. It's 5-0. Consent?
Well, I don't think this should be on consent
Okay.
for this reason, Mr. Chairman. I for all of the reasons that you have stated, let people know the significance of this piece of legislation and the fact that it does need more work, and that we will continue to work on it as it moves across. But we need to do this at this point in time, and as a result of that, it had the unanimous support of the committee.
Okay. I'll go ahead and take it out then, and we'll leave it in the regular calendar.
Great.
All right. Are we at 9:20? No, we're at 9:10. Let's see, can we exec anything else, Sonia?
How about 139?
We need to do 1:30.
All right. Okay, that's right. Okay, Senate Bill 139 then. Is there a motion?
I have an amendment, which I spoke to Senator Avard about. I think everybody has the amendment. It's 0658S. And what it does is if I might, Mr. Chairman,
Please.
does everyone have it?
Yes, I
Yes.
do.
Okay. It's just a charitable organization may petition the commission each month to permit up to an additional 6 game dates per calendar month under the organization's existing license. And then it says a charitable organization may petition the commission each month to permit up to an additional 6 games per calendar month under the organization's existing license. Those are the 2 changes. And the reason for that is, I think that if they want these extra dates, they should be granted these extra dates. But indeed, they should prove they have the people to work them. And this gives them a little incentive, and it gives the petitioner what they want. It gives them the extra dates, but it also shows on the part of the organization the fact that they have the people to do this and to arrive at the extra date. So it puts a little incentive on them to have the people, and a little restriction on us in terms of the granted dates if they have the willingness to go after them. So I offer that amendment to Senate Bill 139 FM.
And further
I ask for
discussion
support.
on the amendment. Senator Hennessy.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have a question for Senator D'Alessandro.
Yes.
Do you know, will this petition, is this a paper petition and it will cause a lot of overhead and extra cost to the commission, or is it an easy email approval type of thing? I just would like to know how much work this petition would be for both the charity and for the commission.
Thank you very much for the question. I think it will be easy. I think the commission will probably set up the rules as they usually do. And what I envision is just a contact. They know the charity and have a relationship with the charity. I assume it will be a very simple situation. It won't be complex. Although many times one assumes that and it becomes complex because of the state bureaucracy. But I think I could watch this one, or we could watch this one to make sure that the transition is as smooth as silk.
Senator Daniels.
Thank you.
Thank you, Senator.
Question from Senator D'Alessandro.
Yes, sir.
There's nothing in the original bill that says if they are granted the extra days to have these games, that they have to have them. So could you explain why the amendment is necessary? Because if they don't have the people that's necessary to run those games, then they just wouldn't have the games.
Yeah, thank you for the question. That's if they don't have the people, they don't have the games. But indeed, Laflamme and his group says that they have the people, and that's why they want the extra dates. And the idea is, you want real bingos, not phony bingos. And I think there has been an advance of the phony bingos, and this I think assures that it's a real bingo, that we have the people to run it, and that the charity is going to receive all of the benefits from it.
Okay.
Thank you for the question.
Further discussion. I'm looking to see if Val King. Oh, Senator Daniels, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, go ahead, Mr. Chairman. I think you were heading the same direction I was.
Yes, I'm looking for Val King from the lottery.
There she is.
There we go. Valerie, would you mind sharing your thoughts on this amendment, what workload it might create and any other things, good, bad, and whatever?
Sure. Good morning. Again, this is Valerie King with New Hampshire Lottery. I understand the intent, but I don't think in reality it's going to do what's intended. You can't run a bingo unless you have your people there now. So I'm not sure what the difference is with the 6 extra days. It wouldn't really be any different than how we would do it now. You can't run a bingo without people. And the ghost bingos are basically, they have the people there, but no one shows up to play. They can leave, but the Lucky 7 machines can continue to operate. But you can't even have a ghost bingo without people initially there.
Right. Further questions for Valerie?
Yeah, I might have one, but Valerie, doesn't this ensure that the
You're
people are there?
recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, sorry. From Ms. King, doesn't this ensure that the people are there to run the bingo? That's why they're asking for the 6 additional days?
Well, again, you can't run any bingo without the people there. We have to have a majority of the organization's members running the bingo event. So even if there's what you call a ghost bingo, you still have to have those people there to start the game. If nobody shows up, they can stop the bingo because there's no one there, but their Lucky 7s can continue. But it wouldn't change how we currently require somebody to be there initially to, and the somebodies have to be a majority of members of the organization. You can't have your
Go ahead.
You can't have your consultants run the game. You have to have at least a majority of members operating your games.
So further question, Mr. Chair?
Further question?
So there's no harm, no foul in this amendment. Is that correct?
Right. We would just basically do the same thing we are currently doing. We would just have extra lines for additional games, and maybe they sign something saying that they're requesting additional games, but it wouldn't change anything else.
Thank you.
Further questions or discussion? Further questions for Mrs. King? Senator Daniels?
Just a comment. Well, I appreciate the amendment that the senator from District 20 has put forward. The amendment, what it does, it asks basically for permission for 6 more games, but that doesn't have anything to do with guaranteeing that you're going to have the people there. Just like the original bill grants another 6 days, but it doesn't necessarily guarantee that the people are going to be there. And what I'm hearing Ms. King say is that it really doesn't matter one way or the other, that the people have to be there in order to hold those games. So I will vote against this amendment only because I don't see that it does anything more than what the original bill is going to do, which ultimately requires people to be there to hold the games. But I thank the senator from District 20 for attempting to clarify things.
Further questions, Ms. King, or comments on this amendment? All right, then we will proceed to a vote. And we'll call the roll.
Mr. Chair, I have a question.
Okay, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Senator Hennessy.
Would you rather me just speak up when I have a question?
Well, you'll put your hand up a little bit higher.
Okay. I'll wave it back and forth.
There you go.
Ms. King, can you tell if this amendment is passed, is it an overhead burden for your commission?
I wouldn't say there'd be any overhead, only because we basically would add a few lines to a form and maybe a signature line, but it wouldn't really change how we process a license. At most, it's just internal, fixing forms and whatnot.
Thank you.
I would share that it would reduce, I think, potentially revenue to the charities. I would also share that I'm strongly supporting Senator D'Alessandro's study committee on all of charitable gaming so we can get our arms around the totality of what's going on there, but I'll be voting in favor of this. So at this time, we'll call the roll.
Oh, I'm
Absent
sorry.
any further discussion. Senator Rosenwald, thank you.
Thank you. Ms. King, when the commission changes forms, is there cost to that as there is in other state agencies?
We're very frugal. I make the forms myself in an Excel spreadsheet.
Whoa, hey.
Maybe you could teach some of the other agencies.
Right. We'll get her on the team.
Thank you.
Oh, boy.
Okay. Any further comment?
Uh,
All right, so we'll call the roll on Amendment 0658S to Senate Bill 159 SN. I'm sorry, 139 FN. Senator Rosenwald,
No,
Senator Hennessy,
No.
Senator Daniels,
No.
Senator D'Alessandro,
yes.
Senator Guida votes no. Who wants to take this out?
And we're back to the original bill, sir.
Oh, that's right, that's right.
could I move the original bill, please?
All right, so now I'll accept a motion on the original
To
bill.
pass.
I'll second.
Okay, so ought to pass by Rosenwald, seconded by Hennessy. And now we'll call the roll. Senator Rosenwald,
Yes,
Senator Hennessy,
Yes.
Senator D'Alessandro,
Yes.
Senator Daniels,
Yes.
and Senator Guida votes yes.
I'll
Consent?
take it out.
Okay, Senator Rosenwald can take it out. Any objection to consent?
I'll move consent.
Second,
Okay. Senator Hennessy,
Yes.
Senator Rosenwald,
yes,
Senator D'Alessandro,
Yes.
Senator Daniels,
Yes.
Senator Guida votes yes. So go on consent, and Senator Rosenwald can take it out.
thank you.
All right. 13. Well, it being 9:23, we're going to go ahead and cut over to open the hearing on Senate Bill. I've got to come out of executive first. There we go.
We'll move out of executive session.
Second.
Okay, moved by D'Alessandro, seconded by Hennessy. Senator Rosenwald,
Yes,
Senator Hennessy,
Yes.
Senator D'Alessandro,
Yes.
Senator Daniels,
Yes.
Senator Guida votes yes. Okay. So we're going to open the hearing now on Senate Bill 112. Let me get over to that document. All right, and Senate Bill 112 is relative to historic horse racing. Senator French is unable to be here today. I believe that Josh Elliott will be presenting the bill. Josh, are you there?
Good morning, Mr. Chairman. I am here. Good morning, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. For the record, Josh Elliott, Deputy Chief of Staff for the State Senate. Senator, as you mentioned, Senator French is tied up this morning, so I'm here to introduce his Senate Bill 112 relative to historical racing. Per the bill analysis, this bill defines and regulates parimutuel pools on historic horse racing. With that, I will conclude my testimony, but I know there's probably a number of people who can speak to the technical details of the bill after I.
Thank you, Josh.
Thank you.
All right, so let's look at a sign-in list.
Next, Mr. Chair, we have Representative Parabrami.
Okay. Representative, are you there?
Here.
Good. Good morning, Pat. Good to see you.
How you doing, Senator? Good. Turns out that I'm also I'm a co-sponsor of this bill, and I'm also the prime sponsor of House Bill 626, which is a very similar bill over in the House. So I can speak. If you want me to speak any detail on this, I can. I wasn't planning on, I thought Senator French was going to be involved, but I will answer any questions. Just for the information of the Senate, this bill did pass, our version of the bill, which is identical. I spent the summer, late summer, with Senator French and Charlie McIntyre of Lottery, making sure our two bills were identical, which they are. But the House Ways and Means voted our version out 16-5, ought to pass last week, just for your information.
All right.
This bill will add 12 million to the Education Trust Fund and another about 5.8 million annually to our charities. And the difference between this bill version and last year's version of this bill is that we're requiring that anyone who has these historic racing machines will have two dates. They will have two charities that will benefit from any revenues generated. That's a change from last year. So that opens up more charities to be eligible to, that's always been one of the big issues. There's a long waiting list of charities that want to be involved with charitable gaming. And this bill, I'm sure the Senate bill does the same thing, will open up basically basically doubling the number of charities that can be involved with benefiting from charitable gaming. And just so you know, this is a new game for charitable gaming. We have 16 venues out there currently, and they will all be able to bring this, if voted yes, bring historic racing. And in short, historic racing is simply, there's these machines that are tied to a database of thousands of races that have been run in the past, horse races. You don't see the name of the horse, you don't see the name of the jockey or the venue or the date, but you do get information on those races. As if you were at the racetrack, you will know the record of the horse without the name of the horse. You'll know the record of the jockey, etc. And it is Paramutual Betting. This is not, these are not slot machines, it's Paramutual. Meaning that you're betting against everybody else who's playing on these machines at the same time. Whereas a slot machine, it's based on a random number generator, and you're competing against the house. Here you're competing against everybody, all other players that are playing at the same time on that race that has been selected for that time period. And so there's much more I can say, but I prefer, if you'd like, I'd take any questions that you may have on this, and I can answer those.
Any questions, Senator D'Alessandro?
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Representative Abrami. Representative Abrami, who's going to own the machines?
The machines are owned by the facilities. More than likely, they're going to be leased by the facilities.
Further question?
Yes.
Follow up?
A follow-up. And does that cost go into the game operators' cost?
No, those are the game operators' costs. Absolutely. They're not absorbed by the state or anything like that. They're the cost of the facilities.
And further, what will the charity get its 35%?
Yes, it will get its 35%. The breakout is, let me see if I can find my notes. So what happens is first off, you have to have a charitable gaming license. This bill, by the way, also requires in a couple of years that these facilities also get a parimutuel racing license as well. And if Charlie McIntyre is on the line, you may want to ask him why he actually put that in, and he can better explain that than I. But at any rate, the licensee, the way the bill reads is license commission on all historic racing parimutuel pools shall be at a rate of no greater than 12%. And this commission is not a commission, it's a commission, how much they get. So the facilities get up to 12%. In reality, it's probably going to be closer to 10 because it's up to 10, up to 12. And the winnings would be greater the lower that number is to the people playing. So it's a competitive thing. You want people to be playing, you want people to be winning. So it's 12%. But of the 12%, let's just assume the 12%. So 25% of this 12% goes to the charities and to the state. And most of the state money goes to the Education Trust Fund. Of the 25%, 35% goes to the charities, and the other 65% goes to the state or to the Education Trust Fund. So that's how the money flows. Hopefully that answers your question, Senator Del Sandro.
To some extent. Further question.
Further
How
question.
much does the game operator retain?
The game operator retains, of that 12%, they retain 75% of the 12%.
Do you have any further question? Do you have any idea what the aggregate amount of dollars that will be based on the projections of that have been given to you?
Yeah, I have. Again, I got my notes here. Oh, gee whiz. Not at my fingertips. I thought I had it in my folder here. But I do have a sheet with the breakout of where and again, if Charlie McIntyre is on the line, he might be able to answer the question. And I didn't have that right at my fingertips.
Oh, sure.
But I do have that number.
Well, I'll question McIntyre when it comes. And one further question: the maximum wager is $25. Is that correct?
Yes, it is. But you say, well, why $25, right?
Yes.
But
it used to be a $2 bet at the racetrack.
That's the top lottery bet that you can place. And you'll hear Charlie talk about it as well. You want to ask him. There's nothing magical about it. The odds are that, well, knowing other facilities that use these machines, no one bets $25. It's much lower than that. $2, $3, $4 is bet.
Thank you, Representative Brahmi. Can't see you, but it's always nice to hear from you.
Yeah.
And I appreciate the work that you've done over the years with regard to charitable gaming.
Right, and obviously I don't know if you get the same letters and emails from all the charities are really supportive of this.
Yes. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Further questions from the members of the committee? Senator Hennessy.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This question is for you. Do we have a fiscal note on this? I see there's one on House Bill 626. I don't know if they are the same or not.
Yeah, I don't see a fiscal note. Perhaps Representative Brahmi.
Well, the fiscal note is Valerie. Valerie is the one who pulls these together from lottery. And mine shows, again, $5.7 million to the charities, a little over $12 million to the Education Trust Fund, and that includes unclaimed tickets. There will be unclaimed tickets. And then there's another 821,000 from breakage that goes to the problem gambling. So that's kind of how the money splits out.
Okay, that's
At least
consistent
that
with
was from the
what,
fiscal, that was from the House fiscal note.
right, and that's consistent with what Josh Elliott testified to when he introduced the bill.
Yep.
Further questions? Hearing none, thank you, Representative, for your testimony.
Thank you, Senator Carter.
So, Mr. Chair, we have a number of folks signed up to speak, as you know. We have two hands raised at this time. One is Michael Kerrigan, and one is Helene Kirk. And now a Tina Andrade. I apologize if I mispronounced that name. So do you want me to go in the order of the list, or do you want me to go with the hands that are raised right now?
Is Commissioner McIntyre available?
Oh, let me take a peek here. Yep, his hand is raised. You want me to bring him in?
Yeah, I'd like him to go over some of the questions that were just levied and explain how the finances work, how the money flows, et cetera, and consistent with Senator D'Alessandro's questions. Good morning, Charlie.
Morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. Happy Monday.
He should be all set.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, good. Okay. Sorry, I didn't see any acknowledgement. Charlie McIntyre from New Hampshire Lottery. Also with me is our Chief Compliance Officer, John Conforti, who is in charge of all licensing and investigations as well. So if I can't answer something, certainly John is more than capable to. Happy to answer the questions you have, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, or any others that may come up.
Senator D.
Up here?
Yeah, I think you wanted to hear how the money flows.
Yes.
12%, that leaves what, 88% and so forth. But let's go ahead, Charlie, explain how the money flows through the charities.
Certainly. Obviously, the operator is the original collector of the funds. 88% is the minimum payoff on the machine. It's more than that varies obviously day by day as the machine gets hit or doesn't get hit. It will vary. It's never a set number, as you can imagine. 25% is what the state takes. Of that 25%, it's split 1/3 to charities, 2/3 to the state. The state will take about $12.8 million on our revenue estimates. The charities will receive $5.7 million, and the remainder goes to the operator to operate the facility, pay wages, facilities, light, heat, and pay for the machines themselves and the technology behind them, which is by industry standards usually done on a rev share, meaning the machine operator and the facility operator usually split the proceeds.
Okay.
And then certainly, as you can imagine, for us, technology is usually our friend because we can, monitor these on a real-time basis versus physical locations where it's people and money. So that's the money flow very, very briefly.
Further questions, Senator Rosenwald.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good morning, Mr. McIntyre. I have two questions, if I could ask them both at the same time. The first is on page 4, line 17 of the bill, 17 and 18. It says that charities from within the Executive Council district where the licensee is located are given preference. And I'm curious how that provision was developed and why, and whether there are other games where we put that into statute. That's my first question. And my second question, I guess I'll hold until you've answered that, if I could.
Okay, certainly, Senator. Thank you for the question. Candidly, that was actually my idea. One of our complaints has always been that the charities and the reach tends to be very localized as to the facility itself. And since there's a facility in each of the council districts, we want to make sure that charities in each of the council districts which is obviously statewide, could access the funds. That's the genesis of it, quite literally.
If I could follow up, Mr. Chairman.
Follow up.
Thank you. So there's going to be redistricting now, and the executive council districts might look different. And that might not be true anymore. Would you believe?
Of course.
Good question.
Of course.
I mean,
Senator,
it's a serious question.
Yes.
What if that isn't true?
Council, for us, literally, there was no magic to it. It was just our fervent hope that these funds will be available statewide. And however that can be best achieved is what we'd support.
And Mr. Chairman, I have another question, if I could.
Yes, please.
Thank you. So in the bill, there's also a 3-year protection of existing operators. And I'm wondering what the background on that is. Why isn't that the state kind of protecting certain businesses and not others? How did that get developed? I've heard
Thank you for the
two
question.
explanations.
Certainly, Senator. Obviously, the language didn't come from us, but as I understand it, that language is there to limit the initial spread of introduction of machines to the state. That's the reason behind that language. Moreover, the folks that are already licensed, we know very well. We have relationships with, we have investigations with. We've audited every facility in the state within the last 2 years. So we have a deep familiarity with them.
Could I just clarify that answer, Mr. Chairman? Thank you. Did you say that language did not come from the Lottery Commission? And if so,
did
do
not.
you know where it came from?
I don't, Madam Chair. I was given a copy of the bill after it was drafted to review.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
You're welcome. Does any member of the committee know where that language came from by chance?
No.
All right.
The question of
Yes, Senator D.
okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Charlie, for being here. So Charlie, what about proliferation of these machines? Where can these machines be placed? How many can be in a specific site? And how often are the machines able to function? Are they going to function 5 days a week, 7 days a week? How's that all going to work and be monitored?
Well, certainly the original bill requires you to be currently licensed, so you're limited to 16 places maximum statewide. I would imagine the just based on market conditions, the bulk of the machines would be in the southern tier of the state, Rocky and Hillsborough County. And that's just where obviously the bulk of charitable gambling is now. We're going to go through rulemaking, a rather robust rulemaking process as is contained in the bill. And so all of the details related to technology will be in rulemaking.
Okay, further question?
Follow up?
Thank you. So Charlie, have you ever played one of these machines? Have you ever seen it work?
I have.
Yeah. So
I have.
Based on your infinite wisdom of these machines, kind of walk me through how you play this machine.
I mean, it's from the ones I've seen, I've only seen either 1 or 2 manufacturers. There's more than that now. I think there's 6. So I can only speak to the ones I've seen. There's a monitor. There's obviously there's an ability to insert funds, whether it be coin or dollar bills. You have a race that's coming up. You can review the race like you would a daily racing form. Conditions are there, horses are there, Paramutual's there. In terms of what horse has what odds, I know you can review past conditions. I believe you can review past races, if I recall correctly. And and you can bet based on that. I mean, you know, I'm an old horse guy, so, you know, it's like betting on a horse race. It's just,
I'm
you
an
know,
old
machine.
horse guy too, Charlie.
Of course. So I mean, that's it in a nutshell. Obviously, how it looks is what makes it interesting, right? It's a machine, so it has lots of lights and colors and sounds. So, but fundamentally, it's a pari-mutuel wager.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Further questions from the committee? Hearing none. Thank you, Charlie.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, Mr. Chair, so we still have those same 3 hands raised and the list of folks signed up to speak. So how would you like to proceed? You want to take the list first or the hands?
Let's take the hands first.
Okay. So Michael Kerrigan.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. My name
Good
is
morning,
Michael.
Mike.
My name is Michael Kerrigan. I'm the Chief of Police for the Nashville Police Department. I'm here today to testify in favor of Senate Bill 112, and I appreciate and respect your time limitation, so I will be brief. I wanted to give you 2 perspectives. Number one, my perspective as the Chief of Police in Nashville. I sit on several nonprofit boards. I sit on Nashville PAL, Marguerite's Place, as well as a couple others. I do a lot of work for nonprofits, including Special Olympics and others. And I just wanted you to get a personal perspective on what this decision means to those nonprofits. Those nonprofits have had a very tough year, as you can imagine, through COVID. They're struggling to raise funds. This is a mechanism for them to stay afloat. I know firsthand that both PAL and Marguerite's Place have been able to stay afloat with the huge revenue they've been able to generate through the charitable gaming. So this would add to those and it would help. The second point, and more importantly, what I'd like to speak to is, as you know, law enforcement has taken quite a beating over the last year for how it conducts itself and accountability. And part of that discussion has been defunding police and has been utilizing other people to come in and handle situations, mental health clinicians and all this stuff. What I'd like to tell you about that really briefly is you need to have a police department that is well-funded, because we handle the immediacy of a situation. If a mental health crisis comes in, we handle it, keep it safe, and then we hand it off to the experts. For the state to hire all the experts needed to handle all those things, it would basically bankrupt the state. What you have in place now is all these nonprofits that are the warm handoffs, that are the experts in these fields to help. We have, if we go to a domestic situation, we handle it, keep it safe, and then we give them to Bridges. We have a great relationship with Bridges. They're a domestic violence, sexual assault shelter, or we give it to Marguerite's Place or any number of different nonprofit organizations. They're the experts that get the victims interviewed, that get the people the resources they needed. They're the psychologists you're trying to get the state to hire. So by using the revenues from these to keep these nonprofits afloat, you have an ability to get the police to handle the situation, hand it off to the experts, and work collaboratively with each other. And it's worked excellent. I know the nonprofits in Nashville get along. By us being involved in that process, we have a one-on-one relationship with all of them. So if there's issues arise, they know who they can call, and those issues are resolved quickly. So I think that it needs to be taken into account. That's something that sometimes you may not realize. Those nonprofits live and die by those funds, and that funding allows them to continue and do things that may cost the state a ton of money if you were to go outside and hire the experts, which would cause them harm. I would be happy to answer any questions on my perspective or my background.
Are there any questions? Thank you, Chief, and thank you for your service.
Thank you for the time, folks.
Okay, next, Mr. Chair, we have Helene Kirk.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman. Instead of Helene, you're getting Neil Kirk.
Representative Kirk, welcome, honorable.
Thank you, Senator. Good morning to you and to members of the committee. I am Neil Kirk. I live in Ware and I'm representing myself. I'm opposed to this bill, and I'd like to explain why and present some issues that you folks need to consider as you continue the legislative process. First, let's start off with a fact. Historic racing machines are, for all practical purposes, video slot machines. Representative Abrami is correct. There are technical differences in terms of parimutuel pools and things like this. But for the person who's playing the machine, there is no appreciable difference. The machine picks your horses, you just approve the machine picks. Bets still take place in seconds. In traditional slot machines, a new game is every 3 to 4 seconds. In historic racing slots, a new game is every 4 to 5 seconds. Seconds now. If you want to see these games and how they're played, there's a video on StrongerNH.com, StrongerNH.com, and you'll see how the games are played. There are 8 issues I think the committee needs to consider as it addresses this bill. Number 1, the Senate Bill 112 really cheats the charities. As you were told, the charities get, of the 12% profit, so to speak, the charities get 9%, the state gets 16%, the operators get 75%. In traditional slots, the charities got 18%, the state got 50%, and the operators got 32%. So in effect, the charities are seeing their share cut in half, the state gets 1/3, and the operators get more than twice as much. I think there's something wrong with that. If this is supposed to be charitable gaming, the proportions are all wrong. Number 2, there's no local control here. Every time we've had a bill dealing with sports betting and keno and casinos, there's always been an opportunity for locals to determine whether they want this kind of activity in their area. There's no such opportunity for that in this case. I would ask, why not? Number 3, there's no limit on the number of machines in any of these places. In effect, this bill authorizes 16 mini casinos. Number 4, this bill is classic crony capitalism. It's an embarrassment to the state of New Hampshire. The bill creates a monopoly, contrary to the words and spirit of the state constitution and the nature of a free enterprise economic system. Part 2, Article 83 says, quote, fair and free competition in the trades and industry is an inherent and essential right for the people and should be protected against all monopolies and conspiracies which tend to hinder or destroy them. So there's a section of the bill in section 5 that grants a monopoly to a small number of people, these 16 game operators licensed as of May 1st, 2020, for 3 years until 2024. This is special interest legislation. How much money will these folks make that the rest of us can't because the legislature gives them a special privilege, a monopoly that our state constitution warns against? Number 5, a younger age limit. In the casino bills, the age has been 21. Here, it's 18. Is that good public policy? Number 6, the economic impact on local businesses. And I'm talking about restaurants, theaters, et cetera, already suffering from COVID-19. About $550 million, according to the fiscal note, is going to be diverted from general spending to these mini casinos. That's $550 million that won't be spent in restaurants, that won't be spent in theaters and other venues. Is that good public policy? 7, inadequate regulation. Mr. McIntyre spoke about the Lottery Commission creating a robust regulation. But in all of the bills that have come before the legislature, it's the legislature, not the commission, that establishes what the rules should be. And the commission simply fills those out. That's not done here. In Rhode Island, there are 32 regulators for one casino. Here we've got 16 facilities and a much smaller number of investigators. Will the Lottery Commission have enough personnel to supervise $550 million of money going through these sites? I mean, that is really enticing for fraud to the detriment of charities, among others. Number 8, gaming on credit is not addressed. Is this only going to be a cash gaming facility, or are we going to allow credit cards and other ways to do this? That should be in the bill, but it isn't there. The bill needs substantial work. If the committee has the time and interest, retain it. If not, vote the bill ITL and have the sponsors revise the bill and submit it again next session. I'd point out, Mr. Chairman, that the House Ways and Means recently voted 24-0 for a comprehensive study of charitable gaming in the state. You might want to consider that study as you go forward in dealing with this bill. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for the opportunity to testify. I'd be pleased to answer any questions that committee members may have.
Thank you, Representative. Are there any questions from members of the committee? Hearing none. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Next, Mr. Chair, we have Tina Andrade, and I apologize again if I mispronounced your last name.
Good morning. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Thank you. Welcome.
Thank you so much for letting me come to you today. I'm Tina Andrade, and I'm with Home Health and Hospice Care and the Community Hospice House. And I'm just here to tell you how important this has been to our agency. The Community Hospice House especially is one of only 2 hospice houses in the state. The reason for that is because they lose a great deal of money, but they are our most beloved resources for families. We are a large visiting nurse association in the hospice, and the majority of our work is done in people's homes. But the Community Hospice House is there because sometimes a person at end of life cannot get the care that they need in the home setting. Sometimes they don't have a caretaker. Our agency is a very old one. We were established in 1883 in Nashua. And our mission has always been to care for people, whatever their financial circumstances. And sometimes that's not easy. I will have to share with you that this has been a challenging year for our frontline staff, really for the whole organization. And that may be a colossal understatement. And yet, because of the hard work of our frontline staff and our very critical protocols that we have put in place, there was never a time when family members were not able to be at the bedside of a loved one at the Community Hospice House. That took some tremendous bravery by our staff and some great resources of personal protective equipment, which were very expensive. This was also the year that, of course, we couldn't have any fundraisers. And so it has been certainly a difficult year for our organization. Charitable gaming for us has really been a game changer in terms of being able to take patients who have fallen through the insurance cracks and who have no resources. And with a hospice patient, when you take someone into the Community Hospice House, you really don't know for sure how long they're going to be there. You can take someone that you think is going to be there a few days, and in fact, through the wonderful care, they may be there a month. And that could well be a patient that we took who had no reimbursement and no resources to pay for their care. So over the last 2 or 3 years, our agency has literally had contributions from charitable gaming of several $100,000. I mean, it really has been amazing. And in every instance, every single penny of that money has gone directly to taking patients who otherwise may not have been able to have this very dignified and comfortable quality of life at the end of life. Now, there is a charitable gaming down the street from where I live. And in fact, my husband is on a billiards team. So I have been in that casino and billiards parlor on numerous occasions. And I would have to say that this is truly a neighborhood gathering place. It is hardly the Encore in Everett or one of the casinos in Las Vegas. It's much different than that. These are good people who run this. And in fact, The owners of this, when we were having events, came to our events and personally committed themselves to the sport of our patients. So I would urge you, this is such a good thing for our nonprofits who in this last year, it is amazing that we were able to keep the doors of the hospice house open and our folks getting in their cars, putting on protective equipment, incredibly uncomfortable, and driving to patients' homes all over southern New Hampshire. Just picture it. You're in your car, you're going up to a door, you have to put on masks and gowns and shields and gloves within the confines of your car, knock on a door where you're not sure what to expect. Would there be a family member inside with COVID? Might you be taking that home to your own family? Coming back out of that house, taking everything off and putting it on all new and driving to the next door that you're going to knock on. Whatever help our agency can get is so precious to the whole economy and the health of the folks in southern New Hampshire. And so I urge you, I know this will bring us a little more money, and all of that will make all the difference in the world. I'm happy to answer any questions and deeply appreciate your allowing me to speak.
Any questions from members of the committee? If not, I do have a question. Tina, can you share roughly how much the charitable gaming brings into your efforts as a hospice, home and hospice?
Yes, absolutely. So the last week that we had brought us $58,000 and some change. And I think to put this in context, so it's my job to write grants, to get corporate sponsorships, to hold events, to do everything in our power. And that's all the different ways we bring philanthropy into the organization. The largest grant I have ever received from the New Hampshire Charitable Organization, and these are very competitive grants, was $20,000. And so, and for all of the other grant makers, you know, there are private foundations, there are other foundations in New Hampshire, but you know, there's a lot of charitable organizations. So it is tremendously competitive. I can work for several weeks along with our CFO on putting together a grant that I may receive $5,000 from. With our individual donors, we have a wide range of amounts of money we get from these great individuals all over our community. But that ranges from a gift of $5 to a gift of perhaps $10,000. And that's unusual. Our events may bring in $30,000 or $40,000 or $50,000, but they're very labor intensive. And as you can see, this last year really couldn't do anything, which was a tremendous blow. So when you consider our week for charitable gaming and the amount of patients that we can take care of because of that money, it's incredible.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Any further questions for Ms. Andrade? Hearing none, thank you very much.
Okay, Mr. Chair. Next, we have Patrick Neely.
Mr. Neely, welcome.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Very good. Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. My name is Patrick Neely. I'm representing Exacta Systems. We are the largest historic horse racing systems and game provider in the country. So I thought I'd just briefly talk about historic horse racing, what it is, and then of course would be happy to answer any questions from members of the committee. As Representative Abrami outlined, historic horse racing is in essence a parimutuel wager on the outcome of a horse race, which, as we know, has been legal in New Hampshire for several decades now. Parimutuel wagering on the outcome of a horse race. So first, the first element is parimutuel. What does that mean? That means that all of the players are wagering against each other. Everybody who bets on a historic horse race is wagering into a parimutuel pool. The operator takes their commission, what we call in the industry their takeout, and the rest of the money that's wagered into that pool is redistributed to winning players. So as a handicapper, as a historic horse racing player, it's possible to be a good HHR player. If you're a good handicapper, you're going to win more of the parimutuel pool than the person playing next to you who isn't as good a handicapper. So that's the first element. It's parimutuel. You're not playing against the house. The house doesn't care whether you win or lose. They don't have an outcome, a stake in the outcome of the wager. The second primary identifier of HHR is that it is on a horse race. You win or lose based on the outcome of a horse race. This is just like a live or simulcast bet at a racetrack. So if you bet the 5 horse to win and the 7 horse to run second, and that's the way that it happens, then you're going to win a percentage of the parimutuel pool, just like in live or simulcast wagering. So a historic horse race, it's parimutuel, it's on the outcome of a horse race. As Mr. McIntyre said, there are no random number generators here. So it's not at random as if it were a slot machine. It is a parimutuel bet, and you're going to win based on the outcome of a horse race. I'd like to talk about a couple of ways that it functions. In our system, and as Mr. McIntyre said, there are 4 or 5 different systems, but our system works, they all work relatively the same way. We have a database of roughly 100,000 historic horse races. So when you sit down at a machine, you put money into the machine. Credit is not permitted, to address an issue raised by a previous speaker. You can't put a credit card in it. It actually has to be cash or a voucher. Our database is roughly 100,000 races that were run at licensed North American racetracks. And in our system, you're presented with 3 horse races. And you're given handicapping information, just like if you were at the track. Now, we have stripped out all the identifying information, the name of the horse, the name of the racetrack, the date that the race was run. But you have handicapping information, statistics, that allows you to handicap the race. And then you can make decisions based on who you think is going to win, who you think is going to run second, who you think is going to run third, et cetera. And so you're given time to look at all this identifying handicapping information, and then you make your handicapping selections. And then once you do, you hit play and the races run, and you see the end, a recreation of the end of the 3 races that you were wagering on. And then based on your handicapping selections, you win or lose a percentage of the parimutuel pool. After that, you're given the identifying information, so you can see the races that you actually bet on. So it'll say Churchill Downs, the 3rd race from June 2nd, 1991. And it'll give you the official race order and the official race results. So you can see all the names of the horses, the jockeys, et cetera. So you know the races that you bet on. It's easily auditable. You can look on your phone and look it up right away if you have a question about whether that race was actually run the way that the machine says it was. So that's all right there. The player can also look at what we call a will pay screen. So it allows the players to know what they have to do in order to win and how much of the parimutuel pool they're going to win. So again, this is very, very similar to going to the racetrack and betting on a live or a simulcast event. So that is in essence how historic horse racing works. Again, I thought I'd like to address a couple of concerns that were raised by a previous speaker. One issue was that this is somehow unfair to the state of New Hampshire, that the tax rate perhaps was a little low. I will tell you that historic horse racing is currently legal in 6 jurisdictions. You would be the 7th state in the country to authorize historic horse racing. Your tax rate of 25% would be the highest of those 7. there was also a question about regulations and whether historic horse racing would somehow open the public up to fraud. We are a heavily regulated industry. Again, we are a parimutuel system. So in every jurisdiction that we operate in, we are heavily regulated, and it is a parimutuel system. So that means that every single wager down to the penny is tracked in real time. At the end of every wagering day, race day, we send a report to the regulators, and they can see exactly what was bet into the parimutuel pools, what was won out of the parimutuel pools. They can see the current balance of all the parimutuel pools. The reports that are sent to the regulators are lengthy. They are voluminous. And again, every single wager down to the penny can be tracked individually and can be tracked in real time. So there is not a single penny that is unaccounted for in our system, in our pools. And again, the regulators have real-time access to all of this information as well. So it would make fraud nearly impossible. And again, historic horse racing has been operating for 15 plus years. In all of that time, there's never been a single fraud-related issue in any jurisdiction where it's currently operating. And finally, as I said, the machines only take cash or a voucher, credit cards. Typically at most racetracks, you can't use a credit card in the self-service wagering terminal. Ours are the same. You have to put in cash. So with that, Mr. Chairman, I'd be happy to open it up for any questions.
Are there any questions from members of the committee? Senator D'Alessandro.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you. You talked about the parimutuel system. Maybe there are some that don't understand the parimutuel system, but give a kind of a brief overview of the parimutuel system, because once you place the bet, you've already lost money because because of the system, correct? So the dollar that you bet, even in terms of a return, you've lost a percentage off the top because that's how the system works.
So yes, that is generally correct. So in the parimutuel system, again, you're not betting against the house. You're not betting against the operator. So when you put $1 into a parimutuel pool, right off the top, the operator is going to take their commission. So if you put $1 in and the commission is set to 10%, then yes, the dime will come out of that wager, and 90 cents will remain in the parimutuel pool. And then that 90 cents is redistributed to players based on how good handicappers they are, based on the outcome of their wagers.
Great. And further question, Mr. Chairman?
Please.
Okay, and tell us about the breakage. What is, most of my colleagues, I don't think, know what breakage is.
Sure. So again, this is a parimutuel concept. Again, this parimutuel concept is the way that live and simulcast racing works. So it's exactly the same if you go and bet $2 to win on a horse at a live racetrack. The same thing happens. Takeout is taken from that wager, and the rest of the money is put into the parimutuel pool to be redistributed. So breakage is a racing concept. Typically in racing and in historic horse racing, we pay to the nickel. So say, for example, the result of your wager, you should win $2.12. We won't pay you $2.12. In that case, we typically round down to $2.10. So that 2 cents that's left over is called breakage. And depending on the jurisdiction, that breakage goes into various accounts. Typically in Kentucky, it goes to like the backside improvement fund. So it's usually a relatively small number. In Wyoming, we pay, it's a few $100s a month typically in breakage, but that is the concept of breakage.
Thank you.
Okay. Further questions? All right, hearing none. Thank you very much.
Okay, Mr. Chair, next we have Rick Newman.
Very good. Good morning, Rick. Welcome back.
He appears to be muted.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. You can hear me now?
Yep, we hear you fine. Thanks.
I appreciate your time and I respect your time. I'll be relatively brief, but I'm Rick Newman representing the New Hampshire Charitable Gaming Operators Association. And we, of course, do support this legislation. Our primary focus of trying to pass this bill is to give New Hampshire charity gaming facilities an electronic game that we can offer to patrons so that we can compete with the out-of-state casinos that now surround us. And what we've seen is between Encore and the Churchill Downs Casino in Maine, there's very aggressive marketing that comes into New Hampshire that goes, trying to attract New Hampshire dollars out of state. And that definitely impacted charity gaming particularly when Encore opened and as Oxford's casino in Maine becomes more aggressive with their marketing. So that is why we're here to advocate for this. This is an excellent opportunity for New Hampshire to continue the unique approach to gaming that we've taken, where we have a charity benefit and we have, currently we have table games, and this gives us an electronic option. So we hope that you will support it. I do want to address one question that Senator Rosenwald brought up about the issue of the 3-year, as she put it, protection. I can tell you where that originated. It originated in the House committee a couple of years ago. And one of the members of the committee said that they had been told by an out-of-state casino interest that if this bill passed, that interest was going to put in multiple locations and just put historic racing machines. That's not the intent of this bill. This bill is to be an add-on and an assist to charity gaming. So the committee decided that the way to put the brakes on something like that was to basically grandfather in the existing facilities for the first 3 years. And that gives the commission and the state an opportunity to see how these things operate and perhaps look at what, if anything, they want to do regarding future regulation. As Charlie McIntyre said, the other part of that rationale is that every single one of those charity game operators is known to the commission. They've been doing business here for a long time, and every one of them have been audited and have been found to be operating, excellent run operations. So that is the origin of that provision. And Mr. Chairman, I could say a lot more, but I won't. I'll be happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Rick. Senator Hennessy, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Rick, for taking my question. We heard testimony from former State Representative Kirk that the payouts on this type of machine would be different than other machines. Can you go into that? Are the percentages different on these? And if so, why would that be?
Well, there aren't other machines in New Hampshire, but Paramutual, many people have said, this is a Paramutual product. So that is different than what we have now. So right now you have table games and you have a poker, and those gambling opportunities are available. They're very different than Paramutual. So what happens in this instance is you take what is called the takeout. You take the takeout out, and then this bill provides that the charities and the state split 25% of the takeout. Now, Mr. Kirk made the point, well, that leaves 75% for the game operator. And of course, I'm sure you all know, there are a great deal of expenses that come out of that 75%, including buying or leasing the machines, paying for employees, electricity, which is an incredible expense. So there's a lot of money that comes out of there. But the charity does end up getting 35% of the 25%. Now, it may sound complicated, but it really isn't. The reality is the charities are going to get in net dollars about $5.7 million in additional revenue under this bill.
Follow up?
Please.
Thank you. So for the machines that we do have in the state already, how is the payout different? So
So the
not the
only-
table games.
Excuse me, the only machines I'm aware of that we have in New Hampshire operating are what are referred to as Lucky 7 machines. Lucky 7 machines operate very differently than these in that, number one, they operate on the basis of a deal. So each deal has 3,500 tickets. The maximum ticket price is $1. So each deal has $3,500 total amount of money available. My understanding is most of those machines pay out about 90%, which leaves about $350 of that 3,500. And out of that $350, the charity pays for the cost of the deal and pays the state $15. And the rest of the money is the charity's money. So these are very different than Lucky 7 machines. We don't have any other types of machines in New Hampshire that I'm aware of.
Thank you.
Further questions? Hearing none. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Next, Mr. Chair, we have Senator Peter Bragdon.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I assume you folks can hear me okay?
We can. Welcome.
All right, very good. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. My name is Peter Bragdon, and I represent Churchill Downs Incorporated. I'm here to speak in opposition to Senate Bill 112, a bill to allow historical racing machines in New Hampshire. Or more accurately, I should say, a bill to allow some companies to have historical racing machines, but not others. As many of you know, Churchill Downs is home to the Kentucky Derby, the most beloved race in sports. Churchill Downs is more than a famous racetrack. However, Churchill Downs Incorporated operates over a dozen racing and gaming facilities in 9 states. Churchill Downs is very familiar with historic racing machines, obviously, having hosted the world's premier horse racing event for almost 150 years and having literally thousands of these electronic machines at their facilities. With gaming facilities in 9 states, Churchill Downs obviously keeps an eye open for opportunities around the country. They are aware of New Hampshire's interest in historic racing machines, and they are aware of various real estate opportunities in New Hampshire, including the recent closure of several movie theaters, large facilities with ample parking, just the type of property ideal for a gaming facility. With that as background, then, some of you may be surprised to hear that Churchill Downs is opposed to Senate Bill 112. The primary reason is even though Senate Bill 112 makes historic racing machines much more lucrative to the operators than other gaming in New Hampshire, and by that I mean that under Senate Bill 112, charities only get 1/4 of what they currently get, while the operator's share goes up to 75%, transferring more than $13 million from the charities to the operators. It's a very beneficial situation. But as I was saying, even though it's more beneficial to the operators, that benefit only applies to a small group of hand-selected operators. Specifically, I'll call your attention to page 2 of the bill, starting at line 22. That whole section states that only operators holding a license in New Hampshire on May 1st, 2020 would be allowed to operate historic racing machines. In other words, nobody else, including Churchill Downs, can operate in New Hampshire. That unconstitutional restriction on new entries into the market runs through 2024. It basically gives existing operators a 3-year monopoly. After 3 years, that anti-competitive head start would make it much more difficult for someone new to enter the market. I'll note that bills allowing historic racing machines have been around since at least 2009. I remember one when I was in the Senate back then, was the first one I saw. That anti-competitive provision was not in the original 2009 bill, nor any of the seemingly annual historic racing machine bills we saw up until 2019. Then suddenly, last year, after Churchill Downs started asking questions about New Hampshire, that anti-competitive provision appeared. I'll note also the story that you've been told about the original of this provision does not make a whole lot of sense. If the goal was to limit it so that you couldn't have historic racing machines only at a facility, that they had to run table games as well, you could put that provision in the statute that they have to run table games as well. But no, they put a provision in there that says nobody new can come into the marketplace. They also say that, well, the Lottery Commission has examined these other operators. We know them well. I can tell you that Churchill Downs is a publicly traded corporation subject to all kinds of financial scrutiny. They operate casinos and racing establishments in 9 states. They are very familiar with very tight regulatory markets. In fact, you have a study commission that the House has passed, and I believe it's part of Senator D'Alessandro's bill that you'll hear later that talks about the need to study the enforcement structure of charitable racing in New Hampshire. So to say that, to imply that the initial investigation by the Lottery Commission isn't good enough, we have to give people 3 years before we know that they're good or not, doesn't make a whole lot of sense. Perhaps the existing operators don't want the competition, but the state should not be picking winners and losers. Gaming consumers deserve a choice, and charities deserve a choice of who they contract with. I'm not sure what the committee plans to do with Senate Bill 112. Perhaps you ITL it, as has happened with every historic racing bill since 2009 at the hands of either the House or the Senate. Or perhaps you retain it as you study charitable gaming as proposed by Senator D'Alessandro's upcoming bill. But if you decide to pass this bill, I urge you to remove the section that has the state picking winners and losers and that gives players and charities fewer choices. Thank you for your time. I'd be happy to answer any questions you might have.
Thank you, Senator. Are there any questions? All right, hearing none. Thank you for your testimony, Peter.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, next, Mr. Chair, we have Jerry Stringham.
Welcome, Mr. String.
Thank you very much. You can hear me okay?
Yes.
Great. As you said, I'm Jerry Stringham. I represented Grafton County's 5th district last term on the House Ways and Means Committee, but I'm representing myself today. It's nice to see you all. Regarding SB 112, first of all, there was an extensive amount of time spent in the last biennium on predecessor bills. I personally spent more time on this topic than any other single topic last term. I spoke on the House floor twice because these bills, just like SB 112, are dangerous and financially a bad deal for our state. First, let me summarize the difference between historic racing and video gaming machines. You've heard some about it. Video gaming machines are what we'd call slot machines. The entire premise of the bill that this is an extension of live video horse racing is really a ruse. The 2 years of testimony we heard definitely showed that the machines called historic racing play like slot machines. The systems are normally played with a button where the 3-horse races are concluded within 5 seconds. The screen does not display a horse race. It looks like a poker hand or some other image that's more common to video slots. The user experience is just like video gaming, and all of the negative aspects that come with the traditional slots come with this historic racing. Because of that, this bill is a backdoor effort to infiltrate our state with 16 mini casinos. While the underlying programming is based on prior horse races, with this auto bet feature, to the players and the businesses, they will be used like slot machines. Maybe you don't mind having slot machines in our gaming facilities, but if you do want to move forward with slot-like machines for our state, which is a separate question, this is a horrible way to do it. With this bill, the state is getting a small percentage of about 16% of the take, the charities 9%. That's a bad deal for our state and our charities. Charlie McIntyre indicated last term that if he offered a contract for bid for video gaming or for slots, we would likely get a substantial license fee up front plus 55% of the take. In Maryland right now, video slots or video gaming slots get 61% of the take. To support what should be, if you're going to create all the problems that comes with slots, we should get that much money and that much for our education system. If we wanted, we could set up a charitable business fee from this 55% gaming fee. So using video gaming would be a dominant strategy over using historic racing. I personally don't support slots either because of the other problems. But if you're going to go in that direction, historic racing is not the way to do it. There are other problems with the bill. It allows gambling on a slot-like machine for 18-year-olds. Our neighboring states have a 21-year-old restriction. We will attract 18 to 21-year-olds here. I don't think that's something we want to do. The $25 betting limit is way too high for a slot machine. You know, I personally heard a lot of testimony here locally. I'll share one from a constituent who I have permission to share. His wife's gambling problems destroyed his marriage. Her habits wiped out most of the couple's savings. He couldn't escape it. Efforts to divorce were contested and difficult. He moved up here to Lincoln in part to escape that and support his son's interest in aerial ski jumping. But because he was still married, his estranged wife's new credit card bills and debts kept coming back to him. For a while, he was able to get her to quit and get some help, but then the Encore Casino opened up near where they previously lived in Massachusetts. He knew she wasn't going to be able to resist with video gaming so close, so they took the painful step to bring her up to Grafton County. He says if either historic racing or slots show up here, he's gone. He is living next to a hand grenade with a pin removed, and historic racing will provide the jolt to blow up his world again. He is asking to preserve the special nature of the Granite State as a no slot machine or historic racing machine state. But anything else, this bill does not provide any local control over whether or not these are allowed in like we do for other things. And that should certainly be part of anything. So in terms of this backdoor effort to introduce dozens of casinos into the state, due to one, legalization of a technology long believed to be dangerous, two, turning our state into a home for under 21-year-old gamblers, three, poor economics for the state and the charities for a device like this, fourth, unfairness to pre-selecting who can and can't get these systems, and five, lack of say by local communities. I strongly recommend against this bill. But I do want to encourage you to spend a few minutes on the at least the video if you have not experienced historic racing as it is in the 6 states that have it now. I think you'll be surprised that you were really looking at a video gaming system. Thank you very much. I'd be happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Are there any questions for Mr. Stringham, Representative Stringham? All right, hearing none. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Senator Gaida.
You're welcome.
Okay, Mr. Chair, the last person we had signed up to speak on our sign-in sheet was a Remy Fortin. However, he is not, I don't see him on our list of attendees. So if he is calling in, please dial *9, which will virtually raise your hand. And I do not see any hands raised, Mr. Chair.
All right.
Oh, I see a hand raised. Fred Doucette just raised his hand.
All right, Mr. Doucette, you're recognized to speak.
Good morning, Senator. Good morning, members of the committee. I'm Representative Fred Doucette from Rockingham 8 Salem, and I've been listening to the testimony this morning. And I presently sit on Ways and Means and did last cycle. And a lot of the arguments that I'm hearing yet again for a multitude of times, I find very frustrating. First and foremost, what I find frustrating is any weight given to the fact of how this legislation affects Churchill Downs. Okay, what this does, in my humble opinion, is augment and helps the charities in our state. This piece of legislation, again, echoing what Representative Stringham had just testified to, has been worked on ad nauseum over the last biennium. Representatives at least on our side, Abrami, Major, and others have really worked through this with Charlie McIntyre of Lottery and others. And I know that this piece of legislation that you're looking at is a mirror reflection. Some of the issues that came up, just my opinion, I just heard, the last thing I heard was the 18-year-olds gambling in the state. Need I remind the committee that the legal age to buy a scratch ticket in the state of New Hampshire is 18 years old. The legal right to vote is 18 years old. The legal right to walk into any of these charitable gaming casinos, charitable gaming venues, whatever label you want to put on them, is 18 years old. So it wouldn't be a change, but they're trying to single this out for this one particular extra component that the charities are going to benefit from. This is an additional game. Some testimony had been put forth about the Lucky 7 machines. These are just another component in charitable gaming. And might I state that in Salem, of course, we had Rockingham Park and we had horse racing for years, and there's not a draw for horse racing anymore, in-person horse racing. And we have a great development going on down in Salem with the Tuscan Village. But it's a different day, a different era, and a different type of person that goes to a gaming facility to get entertainment, to get some value for their dollars. If they're going to spend 25 or 50 bucks in a gaming facility, they're more apt in this day and age to use an electronic version of gaming. I'm trying to be brief here, but so the 18-year-old thing is in place. We'll be changing it. The local option, I heard brought up also. These gaming facilities are in place now. It's not going to change what's in these facilities as it stands. There are some people I know in Salem, our local boards did a great job in zoning areas where charitable gaming is accepted. There's actually a warrant article on our warrant tomorrow in relation to this specifically. I think towns and cities, although we scream for local control, sometimes they don't do the work that they need to do to address their issues in their own towns. Let's see, I was making myself notes. The issue of the $25 bet, that in my recollection now was reflective of the biggest scratch ticket you can buy in the state of New Hampshire is $25. So I think that was how that number came up. And let me see, I'd be happy to answer any questions. I just wanted to jump on real quick where I was listening to the testimony.
Senator D'Alessandro, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And thank you, Representative Doucette. Just two questions. One having to do with the exclusivity of those that already have a license. Why shouldn't this be an open competition for people who manufacture these machines to be able to compete? You say we have the places in place, they're going to want the machines. Why shouldn't there be competition as to who sells the machines? And the second one has to do with the counties. The executive council areas, as Senator Rosenwald pointed out, there's going to be a redistribution. Those council districts have been gerrymandered considerably, and when you look at them, you'll see that there'll be places, or there'll be executive council districts where there'll be a demand for this, and there'll be other council districts where there won't be any. So those two questions, please. And you've been part of the discussion, so really your insight would be appreciated.
Certainly, Senator. Thank you for the question. I'll take your second question first. I think Charlie McIntyre kind of answered that in relation to the executive council districts, at least to my understanding. Also, going back to why the 16 rooms are grandfathered, or whatever tag we put on that, that I can speak specifically. Nobody's spoken specifically about it. The chair of Ways and Means last biennium had a big issue with quote unquote slot parlors popping up on every corner. That was her amendment at its inception. So this was something, and in retrospect, it gives lottery a chance to come on board with this to the speed they want to. And it was basically an amendment to answer a question that the then chairman of Ways and Means had.
So if I might, Mr. Chairman, so
Please.
specifically, the rationale was an answer to a query by the chairman of the Ways and Means Committee in the last session about proliferation. That's why there was a restriction placed?
The amendment that was offered, I believe it was offered in the form of amendment last biennium, was a direct result of the chairwoman's issue with, and she insists, as many have testified this morning, of calling these slot machines, but she called charitable gaming facilities slot parlors, and she had a concern that quote unquote slot parlors would be popping up on every corner. So my distinct recollection is this was a direct answer to her concern at the time.
Just one further question. Do you share that concern?
Do I share that concern?
Yes.
Not necessarily. Not necessarily.
Right.
There's a lot of, and if I might, Senator,
Sure.
There's a lot of focus on this right now, and there's a lot of there's a lot of misinformation out there about this. But this has been, and a lot of revisitation with the going back to trying to twist what these machines are and what they will do for the charities in the end, and what they'll do for us, quite frankly, with the in the educational end of things and state revenue end of things. The fact remains is that this is a tool to help out these charities right now. And I guess I'm speaking from a personal point of view at this point, because you did hear testimony from folks over at the Merrimack Hospice House, that organization. And I personally, without going into it, had a family member that reaped the benefit of that, who wasn't in a position during his dying days to worry about, or his family wasn't, to worry about dollars, so he could pass in a place that he passed in the most beautiful place. These folks depend on these dollars, and what it all boils down to this representative, Senator, is helping these charities and helping the end user of these charities. That's what this is about. This isn't a big game about, whether these are slot machines. They're not. There's legal precedent. Whether I'm concerned about an operator that may be operating within the realm of Oxford Casino's great reach. What interest does an out-of-state entity have in New Hampshire charitable gaming other than their profit? Okay, I find this very frustrating.
Sure.
This,
the only thing
in my
I'm
opinion, this
concerned
needs to be moved forward.
I understand all of your sense and appreciate that, but the question was, should this be competitive? And I think you've addressed that. My question is, how did it happen? You've told me how it happened. I accept that, and thank you very much.
Thank you, Senator.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
You're welcome. Any further questions from members of the committee? All right. Mr. Doucette, if you'd care to elaborate further on your comments?
No, Senator, I'm sorry, and forgive me for my personal attachment to the charity end of things. I appreciate the opportunity, Mr. Chairman, and stand ready to answer anything if you need be.
Thank you very much. Further questions from the committee? Hearing none. Thank you, Representative, for your testimony.
Okay, Mr. Chair, at this time, there are no additional hands raised, and I will just note one more time that we did have Remy Fortin signed up to speak, but I do not see them under the attendees present to speak.
Very well. Then with no further, is anyone spoken once that wants to speak a second time? No hands, nothing of that sort?
Nope.
Okay, then I'll close the hearing on Senate Bill 112. And we'll open the hearing on Senate Bill 102. Would any member care to take a 5-minute break? I would like to do so if that's okay with the committee. I'd take a recess for 5 minutes and be back here at 10:50.
Okay, Bob, what do you think?
Well, I'm not prepared to exec any of these yet today.
Great. I'm not, I think you're right.
I do need to add some remarks and I was remiss. Representative Almy had called me last evening. And I told her that I would present to the committee her request that we consider putting a local option for the horse racing, for the historic racing, I should say. And so just if we could note that in the record,
Yeah,
that would be appropriate. I mean, you can certainly take that up, but I have some questions on this bill and potential changes to it possibly that since it's not an FN, we don't have to worry about it.
right. Well, I think we really have to look at, just my suggestion, that the section having to do with those who have the license in the moratorium on others coming in, and then the county things. It seems to be I don't know how that fits. The 25 and the Paramutual system. As soon as you
if I might, Senator Daniels has a time constraint.
Yeah, as do I.
All right, so 11. I'd like to open the hearing now on Senate Bill 102. And we may wind up recessing that hearing, but we'd like to get it started at this point.
Great.
As soon as I can get to it here. So at this time, we'll open the hearing on Senate Bill 102. Adopting omnibus legislation on property taxation. The bill adopts. Well, is the prime sponsor available?
So for part one, Senator Perkins Quokka.
Okay.
Good morning, colleagues of the Ways and Means Committee.
Good morning, Senator Perkins Quokka.
Good morning. For the record, I am Senator Rebecca Perkins Quokka from Senate District 21, representing the city of Portsmouth and the towns of Madbury, Lee, Durham, Newington, Newmarket, and Newfields. I'm the prime sponsor of Part 1 of SB 102, an act adopting omnibus legislation on property taxation. I'm bringing this bill on behalf of the city of Portsmouth. The CLSR would postpone property tax assessments during the tax year beginning 1st, 2021. Also, any appeal filed for the property tax year beginning April 1st, 2021 will utilize the 2020 median equalization ratio as established by the Department of Revenue Administration for each municipality for abatement purposes. This LSR will prevent property owners from having to have their tax assessments occur during an artificially inflated real estate market. Assessing property during what is potentially a bubble at this time would make it harder and more expensive for people to stay in their homes during a time when we've all learned the importance of home and what that means. It has come to my attention that the city of Portsmouth will not need to conduct a reevaluation this year, but perhaps there are other communities which may be interested in this procedure. I know representatives of the DRA may be here today, and we should hear their concerns to ensure there are no unintended consequences to the bill. Mr. Chairman, thank you for the opportunity to present Part 1 of SB 102. I'll be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you, Senator. Any questions from the members of the committee? All right, hearing none. Thank you very much.
Okay, Mr. Chair. So next for part 2, the prime sponsor is Senator Khan.
Senator Khan, welcome.
I'm being heard.
Yes, maybe a little louder.
Okay, I can adjust that. How's this?
Much better. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Members of the Ways and Means Committee, good morning. And I will present part 2 of Senate Bill 102, which is relative to a property tax relief program for qualifying residential properties in a designated residential property revitalization zone. The idea of this is explained at the bottom of page 2 of the bill and up to the top of page 3. And before diving into the details there, I'll give you just a little bit of the background as you're perusing that. This bill was introduced as Senate Bill 152 in the 2020 session. It was reviewed by Election Law and Municipal Affairs in that session and was passed by the committee as amended in the current form that you see. It passed 5-0 on February 19th of 2020. It was then passed on a consent calendar by the full Senate on March 5th. And I think you can pretty much surmise the calendar from that point forward. The bill ultimately went from the Senate to the House and was then never heard in committee or enrolled in committee, and was tabled in the House in the 2020 session. So it was clearly not a COVID relief related bill. It was not part of an omnibus consolidated Senate action, and the bill needs to be reintroduced if it's going to receive further consideration, reintroduced into our our 2021 legislative session. The purpose of the bill is still quite needed. A town like Keene is very interested in being able to have the authority to designate a residential revitalization zone. In trying to put some borders around what is revitalization, it is the definition of what is a residential home, which is 4 or less units. It is a property that has improvements on it that are 40 years old or greater. And just to visualize how that might look in a city like Keene, imagine around a college neighborhood where the college enrollment at one time was 1,000 students greater than it is today. And the demand for the housing in that abutting neighborhood around the college just isn't as great as it was. And so you've got properties that were originally single family homes that have morphed into single person homes, residential places, and now are really viable for workforce housing. But they take reinvestment, and they take some revitalization, and that's the idea behind the zone, is that the city would have that opportunity of designating an area that had aging property that needed significant improvements, and through these kind of investments, there would be some tax relief over a defined period, which is 5 years or up to 10, and that it can be a maximum of whatever 20% of the total amount of the improvement value that there is, the taxable valuation. So if there was a $180,000 property and it had improvements that moved it up to $230,000 of assessed valuation, that $50,000 difference would provide up to $10,000 tax abatement in the valuation for that property during that 5 to 10 year period. So that's the value that the city can bequest to a property owner, is not taxing that portion of the increased valuation. I probably blew that calculation, because in Keene that taxable valuation is about $35 a thousand. So figure out what 20% of that is. That's the difference that a person, so it's around $1,500 a year. And over the 5-year period, it would be $7,500 of the $50,000 improvement. That's how it works. Okay. I'm ready to answer any questions. I think the mayor signed in, Mayor Hansel, as in support. He might be signing back on at 11. I don't know if he's here to testify, but it is something that he and I have worked on this together. And we know that we want to have some housing initiatives here in the city, both for new housing and for restoration of older housing, all in the effort of just trying to make more housing available for workforce income families.
Okay.
Middle income families. Ready to take any questions, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, are there any questions for Senator Khan from members of the committee? Hearing none, thank you very much.
Next, Mr. Chair, to introduce Part 3 of the bill is Senator Prentice.
Senator Prentice, welcome to Ways and Means.
Good morning, Senator Gaida and members of Ways and Means. Thank you for your time this morning. Again, for the record, my name is Suzanne Prentice, and I am the State Senator for District 5. I am here this morning to introduce Section 3 of 102, which is allowing towns and cities to adopt a property tax exemption for certain renewable generation and energy storage systems. I'm going to do a quick sound check. Am I good?
Yes, you are.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. Lebanon, like a growing number of municipalities in New Hampshire, have official commitments or plans to accelerate our shift to renewable energy and away from fossil fuels. And in Lebanon, this takes the form of master plan goals, of relying on as much local renewable energy as possible, not just in city government, but the entire city, and acting consistent with the state's climate action plan from 2009 with a goal of 80% reduction of greenhouse gas emissions by 2050. Our council has unanimously endorsed the Paris Climate Accord and expressed the intent to act to support those goals and even provide leadership in this regard. There's a growing realization that the world is in an accelerating climate crisis, and as the world, including the US and most New Hampshire and each municipality within it, unfortunately, falls further behind the trajectory we need to be on to achieve our climate action goals in a timely and affordable manner as each year passes. One obstacle in New Hampshire to local progress on these goals is how we apply the property tax to renewable generation and storage. And here we're specifically talking about third-party owned solar array systems. Most immediately, limiting this exemption to only these systems serving government would create a very problematic situation for Lebanon and many other communities. We don't want to tax third-party owned PV array serving systems. And in particular, I want to give an example of one we have here in Lebanon. It's low and moderate income Mascoma Meadows Cooperative, a resident-owned community manufactured homes served by a solar array. If we don't have the ability to exempt this, any savings that they would be able to realize would be lost to them as well as others that follow in their footsteps. Last but not least, I just want to point out that this is, as has been in the past, a local option. This allows municipalities to specify the provisions for a property tax exemption or credit, the amount of that exemption or credit, and the manner in which it's determined. So with that, I will close my brief introduction. And although I can answer maybe some questions, I do have former state senator and my co-city councilor in Lebanon, Clifton Below, available to support me in that endeavor. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Senator, for your testimony. Are there any questions from other members of the committee? Hearing none, thank you very much.
Okay, Mr. Chair, would this be the appropriate time for me to start calling folks who would like to speak to part one of the bill?
Yes, it would.
Super. So if you are interested in speaking to part one of this bill, this would be the appropriate time to virtually raise your hand or dial *9 if you're calling in via phone.
I might see if the committee's interested in hearing from DRA first.
Super.
Give us facts and background and so forth.
You got it, Mr. Chair. I see a hand raised.
Is that Carolyn Lear by any chance?
Yep.
Well, then welcome, Carolyn.
Good morning, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. While I get started, could I also ask for you to give Mr. James Gary speaking capabilities as well?
Sure.
I just brought James Gary in, Mr. Chair.
Excellent. Thank you. So Carolyn Lear, Assistant Commissioner at the New Hampshire Department of Revenue. With me is James Gary. He's the Director of our Municipal and Property Division. We don't take a position on Section 1 of the bill, but we thought that since the bill does specifically mention our assessment review process, that it would be helpful for us to discuss with you how assessment review has gone in the prior year and how the pandemic has or has not impacted our work there. So I'll hand it over to James to discuss the specifics.
Thank you, Carolyn, and good morning, Mr. Chairman and committee members. Before I start talking, it's sort of, we have to take a step back and say, what is assessment review, which the DRA is directly responsible for? Assessment review is the process of reviewing municipal records at least once every 5 years to determine the degree in which each municipality achieves substantial compliance with applicable statutes and rules. The Municipal and Property Division conducts these reviews using standards established by the Assessing Standards Boards in the following areas: level and uniformity of assessments, assessment practices, exemptions and tax credits, data accuracy, proportionality, and USPAP report compliance. In other words, the DRA provides oversight to ensure that the $4 billion collected annually in property taxes is assessed fairly, accurately, and lawfully. But what does this mean in a practical sense? Each year, approximately 1/5 of all cities and towns in New Hampshire are subject to assessment review. Typically, as part of this process, the DRA will review 1,750 properties statewide. We do this in order to ensure that the information on the property records cards, which is the basis for determining a property's assessed value, is accurate. In addition, we also review another 750 properties for revised inventories. Those are things like building permits, construction, and deconstruction. We also work with city officials and contract assessors to assure that the exemptions and credits are being processed correctly. We look at overall assessing practices in a town to make sure they are USPAP, which is the Uniform Standards of Professional Appraisal Practice, compliant, and that the assessments are made in accordance with the New Hampshire Constitution and all New Hampshire laws and comply with the rules of the Assessing Standard Board. In total, we review over 5,000 records statewide annually. It is important to note that assessment review is not just about the quality of assessing work done in any particular year, but it's about the quality assessing work done over the 5 years since their last assessment review. We do have concern that prohibiting assessment review will cause a backlog that the property staff will not be able to easily recover from. These assessment reviews will have to be done. However, instead of the typical visits of 1,750 reviews and 750 in revised inventories that we would typically see, in 2022 would be facing 3,500 reviews, 1,500 revised inventories, and have to review over 10,000 records. In 2020 and into 2021, the DRA was able to successfully conduct assessment review. We did this under strict protocols. DRA's policy dictated that we only go into cities and towns with less than 11 active COVID cases. This number, while over 100 just a few months ago, has shrunk to approximately 45 today. In addition, the DRA personnel would always wear masks, social distance, and would never go into a property even if asked. In 2020, we were able to perform over 1,100 reviews in field work and had not received, as of now, not one complaint from members of the public. Therefore, the DRA believes that assessment review is vital to ensure equity, fairness, and proportionality in New Hampshire's largest revenue source. Suspending assessment review for a year would create a backlog that the DRA could not easily recover from. And finally, we believe that assessment review can be done for most all cities and towns in a safe manner, protecting the state and local officials and certainly the public for which we serve. Mr. Chairman, thank you for giving me time to speak today.
Thank you, James. Good to see you.
You as well.
Are there any questions for members of the committee? Senator D'Alessandro.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is to James. James, what you're seeing is that
All right, would you members suspend for a second? Are we getting background feed here? I'm hearing echoes.
Here we are.
All right, try it again, and I'm going to mute and see if that helps.
Okay.
Senator Gaida, I actually just muted Mr. Jerry and it stopped. So I'm not sure why, but maybe we'll just, once it's time for Mr. Jerry to respond, he can unmute.
Okay. And then go, Senator D'Alessandro, please continue. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. To Mr. Gary. Mr. Gary, from your testimony, I'm gathering two things. A, you can do it, and B, you don't see any reason why it should be postponed. Am I correct on both of those issues? You can do it safely without any concerns for the health and safety of the people doing the job. And B, you don't think postponing it is the right thing to do at this time.
That would be correct, Senator. We do have concerns about that, and we do believe that we can do it safely and effectively. We certainly could not do it in all towns. Again, I don't envision our policy of not visiting towns with greater than 10 COVID cases to change anytime soon, if at all. So for those towns we would not go into, and so they would not be done, but we certainly can. Right now, it's 78% of the towns or cities and towns in New Hampshire would qualify under our protocols. And we would certainly would like to be able to continue in those towns for sure. And as the numbers continue to drop, hopefully over the next years, that number will start increasing.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Further questions from the committee? All right. I have a question then for Mr. Gary. James, if this were passed, can you in some way project its impact on the towns throughout the state that might enact it? What would happen internally to tax revenues for local property taxes? Is there any way to get a grasp of that?
Sure. As far as tax revenues, it wouldn't impact tax revenues at all. When overall tax revenues or any dollar that a city or town collects is not based on their assessed valuations. It's based on a simple formula, which is total appropriations minus all revenue that is not property tax revenue, and that equals your property tax burden. Where assessed values come in is how is that tax burden distributed on the property owners of the town? So if your tax burden rises proportionally with everyone else, the amount of property taxes you pay will not change. It's only when yours rises differently from everyone else, your individual tax burden will rise or fall. But as far as an overall town goes, what they need and what they will collect in property taxes will not be dependent on their assessed values.
Thank you very much. Any other questions from the committee? Hearing none. Thank you very much, James.
Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Chair, the next hand we have raised to speak to part one is Jim Shoud.
Mr. Michaud, thank you. Welcome.
Good morning, Senators, and thank you for the opportunity to testify today. Can you hear me okay? Very good.
Yes.
So I did submit written testimony to the committee prior to today's hearing. My initial concern is that this bill is unconstitutional. New Hampshire Constitution, Part 2, Article 6 calls for the valuation of the estates within the state taken anew once in every 5 years. This 5-year requirement is not just found in statute, it's also found in the Constitution. So if this bill passes and communities are allowed to go more than 5 years, that would be 25% of the state's communities that are allowed to go more than 5 years. Then any tax bills that they would send out for the 2021 tax year would be uncollectible because that would be based upon an unconstitutional application of the law. I think that should be enough to kill the bill, part 1. But if it isn't, I've added a couple other parts in my written testimony. One is that communities are under contract. 50 plus communities approximately are under contract to get a reevaluation done this year. They're already well into it. They're probably more than 50% into it. So what happens with those contracts? What kind of legal jeopardy does it expose to the New Hampshire municipalities? I'm not a lawyer. I'm not engaged in business contract law, but it obviously presents a big problem for municipalities if this was allowed to go through. Third, this proposal causes legal havoc with property assessment settlement agreements that taxpayers have with municipal jurisdictions throughout the state. Most of those settlement agreements are predicated upon the community will hold this value until the next reevaluation and they name the year because every community knows when its 5-year reassessment is up. So what happens then? It kind of leaves these settlement agreements in legal purgatory and produces a lot more legal costs for taxpayers and municipalities alike. I really think that this is not a good public policy bill, and I would ask the committee to ITL it, and I'm here to answer any questions.
All right, thank you very much. Are there any questions from members of the committee? Hearing none. Thank you, Mr. Michaud.
Thank you.
Next, Mr. Chair, we have Norm Bernash.
Mr. Bernash, welcome. And I hope I haven't mispronounced your name too badly.
It's close. It's like the fine sauce, the Bernays sauce. It's Bernash, but that's fine. Thank you, Mr. Chairman and Senators. My name's Norm Bernash. I'm the Director of Assessing in Hanover. I've been in the assessment business for some 38 years now. Hanover, as some might know, is under an order by the BTLA to be done this year. So we're financially obligated to finish it this year. It doesn't seem like this bill addresses us at all. But in terms of getting the job done, we're actually having a great success here in Hanover, finishing this job because of COVID, because people are actually home and we have a lot more contact with our taxpaying public. So it's been very successful. We're doing it in many ways. We're doing it safely distance inspections with the taxpayer choosing which method. We do FaceTime, we do Zoom, we do walk through the house. So we're actually have a very high success rate. And so I don't see a reason to suspend revaluations. Just for the reason that residential assessments may go up disproportionately or to make it proportional. I don't think this bubble is over. And I think it'll continue for a few years. So I just think we just need to do business as usual. And lastly, if we were to do this, we would not be able to pick up, Hanover would in essence lose some $400,000 in tax revenue, or it would be shifted to the people that the folks that already have an existing property. For instance, under this bill, if you built a house last year, you're getting taxed on it. If you built a house this year, you're not getting taxed on it because we're suspending the reappraisal of property. So we can't go out and do those. So in essence, the rest of the taxpayers are picking up a $400,000 tax bill that's going unpaid by others. I thank you for your time and here to answer any questions you have.
All right, thank you for your testimony. Are there any questions? Hearing none. Thank you, Mr. Benage.
Thank you.
Next, Mr. Chair, we have Paul Smith.
Mr.
Hi,
Smith, welcome.
thank you, and thank you for the opportunity, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee, to testify. Can you guys hear me all right? Can you folks hear me all right?
Yes.
Great. So my name is Paul Smith. I'm the Chief Executive Officer of Vision Government Solutions. We are the largest revaluation vendor in New England, including 57 New Hampshire assessing offices. Right now, we're working on revaluation projects with Manchester, Seabrook, Nashua, Salem, Amherst, and Hanover, just to name a few. And I know that the purpose of this bill was obviously it was the right intention, but I really do believe there are a number of unintended consequences that will result from this bill. I do think it's also worth noting that the House Municipal and County Government Committee voted to kill the bill 18-1, as I understand. So I thought that was a relevant data point because we spoke to this last week. The first issue, I think, as it was just mentioned, is equity. As you know, one of the most important components of assessing is making sure that people pay their fair and equitable amount of taxes. So if you put up a new home, did new construction, built a new hotel, and this bill were to pass, you would not pay your fair share. You would end up with a free ride. And the people who would pick up the share, I can't speak to their financial position, but it very may well be that they do not have the means to cover their fair share. A second reason, and I can speak to this because I know it quite well, a number of the large cities and small cities for that matter and localities do updates more frequently, and they do them more frequently than required because they're trying to avoid a shock to taxpayers, right? So in some cases right now, equalization rates are in the 70s, in the 70% range. That means that folks will right now today face a 30 to 40% increase in their values if nothing is done, right? Sorry, if the normal process would occur. If we were to pause it for a year, that number will rise to 50 to 60% next year. You can't stop the values from going up, right? That isn't something that we're going to be able to prevent. And what that will do is create a very unnecessary and harsh shock to taxpayers. And the reason that our customers do these updates more frequently is to prevent this shock so that people can manage their finances more carefully, right? And it creates substantial unrest and PR issues and concern, and frankly, pain for taxpayers when these updates are not done more frequently, and which is why they're done, right? And third, this will cost cities money. So for example, and I think Mr. Mashad mentioned, a number of these projects have started. If you stop them, obviously the vendors that have done the work are not going to say, oh, no big deal, here's your money back. They're just going to have to redo it all next year. So they're going to have to pay twice for the same project, right? Which will raise costs. So I just wanted to mention that for a number of reasons, we are very concerned about the bill. We think it will create a number of unintended consequences. It will hurt taxpayers, it will hurt municipalities, and it will violate the fundamental concerns of equity within the state. Thank you for the opportunity to testify.
Are there any questions from members of the committee? Hearing none, thank you very much.
Next, Mr. Chair, we have Daniel McGuire.
Honorable McGuire. Dan, how are you? Welcome to the committee.
I'm very well, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I actually want to speak to the entirety of the bill, so I don't know if I should do it now or at the end, or.
I think we're just dealing with this at this point, so we might have to have you come back when we get to the rest of it.
All right, that's fine.
So, Dan, are you wanting to speak to this piece of the bill?
No,
or...
I want to speak about bills like this in general, and the general characteristics of this bill.
All right. Well, then with that in mind, I think it's okay to go ahead and proceed.
All right. May I speak via video?
No, I don't think that's permissible at this time, Dan.
Mr. Chair, I don't have the capabilities to allow video.
Right.
Oh, I see. It's done in the House, so that's why I asked. And I put on my tie.
Yeah, I've asked the same question, so, no.
All right. Anyways, thank you very much, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. For the record, my name is Dan McGuire, and I'm on the board of Granite State taxpayers. So I want to speak to this bill on behalf of Granite State taxpayers. So in general, the property tax is a simple, fair, easy to understand tax. People who own $1 million of property pay 10 times as much tax as people who own $100,000 worth of property. And that depends on a fair estimate of what property is worth. And so we have this 5-year system, and it's done as not perfectly, obviously, because nobody knows exactly what a property is worth, but it's done regularly and in a consistent manner. But that very simple, easy to understand tax has over the years been subject to the legislative tendency to fiddle. And especially as you see in sections 2 and 3 of this bill, there are other policy goals of the legislature. And the tendency is to not necessarily spend directly in the budget, but instead to make changes to tax law to achieve those other goals. For example, part 2 of your bill, the goal is to have better housing quality. Part 3 of the bill, the goal is to have more renewable power, right? Those are perhaps laudable goals, but taxes are the wrong place to do them, because it's none of these. Notice there's no fiscal note or any such thing with this bill, and no one would be able to answer the question, if we pass this bill, how much of that goal is accomplished, right? If we pass this bill, how much will the quality of housing improve, or how much renewable energy will be created? No one knows, because it has to do with what individuals, how they will respond to particular tax incentives. And that's not a question that can be known ahead of time. And the other question is, how much extra tax will those who are not in the position of, because all of these things are trade-offs, right? They're pushing tax from one entity to another. So the question is, to get that laudable goal, how much extra tax will those who are paying it pay? And again, that's unknown, right? So whereas instead, let's suppose in the budget, you put a subsidy for particular renewable energy sources. So you were to say, anybody who generates 1 megawatt of renewable energy, we will pay them $1,000. And we will allocate in our budget $1 million to this project, right? You would then know ahead of time that to get 1,000 megawatts of renewable energy, you will be spending $1 million, right? And you will know what the cost is, and you will know when you're going to spend it, which is in this biennium, and you will prioritize that spending with all the other goals of the state government, right? And you would keep the tax policy simple, fair, and understandable. So this is the wrong place to do this sort of thing, right? This sort of thing ought to be done explicitly in the budget to achieve policy goals. And because then you'll know exactly, you'll have a fiscal note, you will know how much you're getting, you will do it in an efficient manner, because presumably putting renewable energy, for example, on individual homes is less efficient than building a large renewable energy facility. And so by doing things explicitly in the budget, is the right way to accomplish policy goals and not by fiddling with tax policy. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Dan. Are there any questions for Representative McGuire?
I do have a question, Mr. Chairman.
Please.
Thank you. Good morning. Good morning, Dan. It's great to see you. In your testimony, that if our policy goal is X, we should not do it with a tax credit. Does that mean you're also opposed to like the veterans tax credit and the elderly tax credit? Because don't those just help veterans and older people stay in their homes as a policy goal?
Yes, thank you very much for the question, Senator Rosenwald. Senator Rosenwald and I, my entire time during that in the House, 6 years on the Finance Committee, I was a colleague of Senator Rosenwald. So it's nice to see. I actually
And the only person who understood the county long-term care spending.
I actually can't see you at the moment, but
I can't
anyway.
turn my camera on, I'm sorry.
That's all right. So to answer your question, the basic answer is yes. I do think that's the wrong way to do it because, again, do you know when you pass such a thing exactly how much are those veterans, those elderly, those so on, being helped? You know, are they being helped by $1 million, $10 million, and so on, or not? You have no way of knowing, and therefore you have no way of knowing when you've done enough. Right? Exactly how much should they be helped? The Finance Committee has to always do trade-offs between we're helping these people by this much and with those people by that much, and you have certain priorities. But here you're helping people by an unknown amount. You're charging an unknown amount to others, and so you have no way of knowing when they're being helped enough. And to the right extent, whereas, and therefore you have no way of knowing when to stop, right, or when to do more.
Thank you.
Any further questions? Hearing none, thank you very much, Dan. It's a pleasure to see you again.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Chair, at this time, I do not see any hands raised left to speak to part one. So
Okay.
I can make the announcement now if you'd like for part two. So for part
How's everyone doing on time? Everyone okay on time? All right.
So
Okay,
if
let's go to part two.
Super. So if you are here to speak to part two of the bill, this would be the time to raise your hand virtually. And if you are calling in via phone, you can dial *9. All right, Mr. Chair, Sarah Holland.
Sarah, welcome to the committee.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. Am I coming through okay?
You are.
Excellent. My name is Sarah Holland, and I'm the broker and owner of Sarah Holland and Company located in Plymouth. I am also the vice chair of the New Hampshire Association of Realtors Public Policy Committee. The Realtors support Part 2 of SB 102, expanding the definition of a qualifying structure under RSA 79E, the Community Revitalization Tax Relief Incentive Program. The intent of 79E tax incentive is to encourage the rehabilitation of many underutilized structures in our town centers. Adding 40-year-old plus multifamily housing units to the list of qualifying structures will revitalize our downtowns while adding desperately needed housing stock in our state. We cannot overemphasize the dire rental market across New Hampshire. We have a vacancy rate of nearly 0%, which means that areas of our state currently have no rental options available or very few. In the last 2 months, our brokerage alone has received over 50 requests for long-term rental with no way to assist them. A portion of those inquiries could be very well qualified buyers. However, there's no inventory in that market either. The continued lack of inventory is driving up prices and leaving many without an adequate place to live, literally no place to go regardless of their need or want. But 75E tax credits are voluntary for many municipalities, so they can choose to utilize the tax incentives or choose not to. This would simply be another option or a tool for towns with a clearly definition of age of the multifamily, which a town trying to provide new housing options could choose to adopt. We hope you will support part 2 of this legislation, and I thank you for your time.
Thank you, Sarah. Are there any questions from members of the committee? Hearing none. Thank you very much.
Okay, I do not see any additional hands raised at this time to speak to part 2 of the bill.
All right, and we'll move along to part 3.
Super. So if you are here to speak to part 3 of this bill, this would be the time to virtually raise your hand or dial *9 if you are calling via phone. And Clifton Below has their hand raised.
Senator Below, welcome.
Thank you, Senator Gaida, members of the committee. I am the Assistant Mayor for the City of Lebanon and am testifying on behalf of the city. This bill has its origins in a bill introduced last session, Senate Bill 530, that sought to clarify existing exemptions for solar, wind energy, and storage. The issue is that those existing local option exemptions, they don't pertain to any state property taxes, are for persons owning real property which is equipped with the various types of renewable system. And our city manager, when we were looking at the fact that we had procured a number of solar systems, third-party ownership, so they could take advantage of the federal tax credit. So we had purchase power agreements, at least for the first 5 or 6 years, then we might be able to buy them out. But when he was looking at this, sought legal opinion as to whether we could exempt the solar system itself, even though that was not the underlying property owner. The underlying property owner is the municipality. And the legal opinions came back that no, the existing exemptions only pertain to the underlying property owner. So if they own the system, you can get an exemption for the system, but if it's owned by a third party, you can't. So the ridiculous workaround the city went through is to enter into a pilot agreement for these solar systems on city property that was an adder to what we pay the solar company, and then they turn around and pay it back to the city. That kind of works for the city, but it's a very big problem for other projects, including nonprofits, where they might, a third party might finance the construction of a solar system. And Senator Prentice mentioned Mascoma Meadows. That was in the first round of low, moderate income solar projects. And the problem is that, well, in that case, we have to tax it because of the way this law is interpreted, even though we've adopted a property tax exemption, that we wouldn't be taxing it if the underlying property owner owned the system. And the problem is that throws the economics of such projects way off. And I did distribute a PDF to the members of the committee that originates from a year or two ago. But what it does is it compares the tax burden per kilowatt hour on various types of renewable energy and battery storage compared with natural gas combined cycle. And the reality is that in New England, most of our electricity comes from natural gas combined cycle. And that's the most efficient way to make electricity from gas. But it's more fuel. Most of the cost is fuel rather than capital cost. Whereas the renewable systems tend to have much higher capital cost and little or no fuel cost. So when you look at taxing these based on the cost to construct, the capital cost to construct, what you see is that the burden per kilowatt hour on solar is about 7 times that of natural gas. Wind is 3.5 times that of natural gas. And battery storage is about 10 times that of natural gas. Battery storage mainly being used to shift load off peak, so that we reduce our peak demand, which helps all kinds of customers by reducing the amount of capacity we have to pay per kilowatt hour. So this when introduced, it sought to amend those existing statutes so that they could include the actual systems, even if they were owned by a different party. But the Municipal Association and the Assessors Association were concerned that we not change an existing exemption that a municipality may have adopted that would change what they thought what they'd already voted on. So this arose from a proposed amendment that was worked out with the Municipal Association and the Assessors Association. So it's a separate option. And it's just a local option. Some of the other provisions of Part 3 of the bill, just pertain to how DRA accounts for this, because they add back in these values for equalization purposes. It does not exempt them from the statewide property tax or utility property tax if those are what apply. It's just a local option, and it uses the existing definition of renewable energy that's used for payments in lieu of tax agreements. So rather than having a separate one from solar and wind and so forth. So that is basically the story behind the bill. I disagree somewhat with Mr. McGuire simply because of the fact that we don't tax, the property tax doesn't tax generation based on kilowatt hours, which is really the only thing that they produce. We tax it based on capital cost, and that is greatly disadvantages renewables compared to fossil fuel generation because we don't tax the fossil fuel. And I might add, most of the natural gas combined cycle is out of state that supplies electricity to New Hampshire. So by and large, building these renewables in New Hampshire is actually added value to New Hampshire, and it would still be subject to the state tax revenues on property taxes. And so basically that's it. It's just a local option. If the local community doesn't want to do it, they don't need to take it up. Thank you.
Senator Gaida, you're muted.
Thank you. Are there any questions from members of the committee? Hearing none. Thank you very much, Senator.
Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Chair, at this time, I do not see any additional hands raised for this part of the bill.
All right, then with that, I'm willing to close the hearing on Senate Bill 102. All right, I have to get my dog in from outside, so excuse me for just a second. All right, I hear another dog. At this point, we close the hearing on 102. Are we going to be interested in execing any bills? I think there are a number of, I think 112 is probably a no at this point in time. I'd entertain comments from any other senators.
If I could, I think you're right. I think we need to spend some time on 112. And in this particular one, we heard it seemed there was great support for parts 2 and 3, but very little, if any, support of part 1. Maybe we need a little more discussion about that. But that's how I see that one. And those were the two we heard.
I would not be uncomfortable executing on 102, given that we can't break it apart here in committee.
Right.
And I think that according to the testimony, what I've heard, I've pretty much come to conclusions about the different parts of the bills. Are there any members of the committee that would object to executing this at this time?
Mr. Chairman, I would prefer to put it off to the next time if we could.
Very well, then we will delay that. We'll defer until the next session. The next meeting, I should say, of the committee. Any other bills that we'd like to consider? All right, with that then, we'll go ahead and move to adjourn. Somebody want to
Make
move
the
that?
motion, sir.
Yep, and I'll second it.
Okay, Hennessy and D'Alessandro. And we'll call the roll. Senator Daniels,
Yes.
Senator Hennessy,
Yes.
Senator Rosenwald,
Yes.
Senator D'Alessandro,
Yes.
and Senator Gaeta votes yes. We are adjourned. Thank you all for your work. We'll see you in a week.
Okay, nice job, Senator Gaeta, and everybody have a